Welcome to the first week of the Amazing Readathon, hosted by Bree, also known as Four Paws in a Book. I'm going to link her in the description. Go check out her channel. Much like Lexi, she is a strong contributor to BookTube, and her content is really helpful for me to know what to read, and she's influenced me in a number of ways. So go check her out. She's fantastic. I'm going to talk a little bit about the books that I've read so far this week, which have all been on audio for some odd reason. But it's been really nice to sit back and relax and just listen. So the first book that I've read this week was The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This is a historical fiction with a romance, and it's also based around a war. The setting is in Tehran, Iran. And it's a story about a girl named Roya, who is a dreamy, idealistic teenager living in 1953 Tehran. And amidst this political upheaval that she's living in, she finds a literary oasis in a bookshop owned by a man named Mr. Fakhri, and it's also a stationery shop. Mr. Fakhri introduces Roya to this man who is a good friend of his. This man's name is Bauman, and Roya falls in love with him at once. It is love at first sight. So, on the eve of their marriage, Roya agrees to meet Bauman at the town square, but like happens in many war-torn lands, violence suddenly erupts. And in the chaos, Bauman is unable to meet with her. He never shows up. Over the next few months, Roya tries to contact him with no success at all, until more than 60 years later, fate leads her back to Bauman, and she has the opportunity to ask him why he left, where did he go, how was he able to forget her. I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 5 stars, and this book is a new all-time favorite for me. I would highly suggest you go read it. So the second book I read this week has a lot in common with the first book that I read this week. It's 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. It is set in Afghanistan between the 1960s and the early 2000s. This 2007 novel tells the story of Miriam, an illegitimate teenager from Herat, who is forced to marry a shoemaker from Kabul after a family tragedy. Layla, born a generation later, lives a relatively privileged life, but her life intersects with Miriam's when a similar tragedy forces her to accept a marriage proposal from Miriam's husband. This was another 5-star read for me, so there's the first thing these two books have in common. This really should come as no surprise to anybody with my love for historical fiction, especially set during wartime. This story is so full of details. It's got intertwined relationships, love and hate, broken hearts that may or may not become unbroken. So I'm not going to sit here and do a subpar job of reviewing the details, so I'm just going to encourage you to read the book. Second thing I have in common with this book. So also the setting in the Middle East is the third thing these two books have in common. So go pick up 1,000 Splendid Suns. I heard Khaled Hosseini basically rewrote the book 5 times in an effort to get the product that he has out now. And I can guarantee you that all that work he put into this book has really been worth it. The third book I read this week is a story I'm familiar with, not because I've read the story before now, but because I have seen various movies, plays. I've seen it in a number of different ways. And that book is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I gave this book 4.75 stars. I was teetering with 5 stars, but I gave it 4 because it's an epistolary novel, which means that the story is told through diary entries, letters, newspaper articles, and that type of thing. I would just have preferred a little bit of narrative between the characters. And I guess that just comes from me being used to seeing the movie and the plays where there is a lot of narrative interaction between the characters in real life. In the beginning, solicitor Jonathan Harker takes a business trip to stay in the castle of a Transylvanian nobleman, Count Dracula. Hager escapes the castle after discerning that Dracula is a vampire, and the Count moves to England and plagues the seaside town of Whitby. A small group, led by Abraham Van Helsing, investigate, hunt, and, spoiler alert, kill Dracula. This is a really good book, really good movie. I suggest if you're not familiar with the story that you familiarize yourself with it as quickly as possible. And last but not least, we come to the 4th book that I read this week. This book got 4 stars from me, and it's called The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. The basic premise of this story is this. The Venus sisters will always be identical, but after growing up together in a small southern black community and running away at the age of 16, it's not just the shape of their daily lives that is different as adults. It's everything, their families, their communities, even their racial identities. Many years later, one sister lives back in the community with her daughter, with her black daughter, in the same southern community that she tried to escape so many years ago, while the other sister passes for white, and her white husband has no idea about her past. Still, even separated by so many miles and just as many lies, the fates of the twins remain intertwined. What will happen to the next generation when their own daughters' storylines intersect? I thought this was an interesting take on relationships, on racial identity, on self-identity, and it was a really good, thought-provoking read. I would recommend this for anyone. It's been a really good week as far as reading. I think the lowest rating I gave was a 4.0, so that's exciting. And I hope that next week when I come to you and share my next few books that I've had just as successful a week in finding good reads. Y'all have a good week.